Get myself organized. My apologies.
Good.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Good morning and welcome to the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District Citizen Advisory Committee meeting. We'll do our best to facilitate a smooth meeting with public participation via Zoom and webcast. Before we begin, here are some important guidelines and general instructions for the meeting. Please silence your other communication devices such as your cell phone. During the meeting, all public participants will be placed on mute by the host. Public members will not be able to mute or unmute manually. Audio for members of the public will be unmuted once they are recognized to make a public comment. We'll go ahead and do roll call.
Okay, good morning. Mr. Cunha,
Here.
Mr. Clark, Ms. Zimmerman, Ms. Brown,
Here.
Ms. Gutile, Mr. Medeiros, Chris Medeiros, Ms. Lopes. Is Ms. Lopes present in Modesto?
Yes, she is present.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Hofdahl,
Here.
Mr. Savage, Ms.
Not
Pitt,
present.
Ms. Pitt,
Not present.
Mr. Rios, Mr. Bakke, Ms. Austin Tibbetts, Mr. Sanders,
Present.
Ms. Deming, Ms. Holmes,
Here.
Ms. Nebeker, Mr. Liba,
I'm here.
Ms. Eggers,
Here.
Mr. Tristo, Ms. Fast, Mr. Tuttle, Mr. Cryer,
Here.
Ms. Matthews,
Here.
Mr. Trost, Mr. Zachariah, Mr. Amabil, Mr. Moran, Mr. Cantu,
Here.
Mr. Fisher,
Here.
Mr. Medeiros, Mr. Meister. Through the chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. If you can please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will now move on to item 4, approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections or additions from the members to the minutes previously submitted for the October 7th, 2025 CAC meeting?
So I hate to say this, but I don't think I got any in the email with the attachments, and I went online and I don't see it listed under this meeting. Am I missing something?
Let me check. Hold on one second.
Okay, it's found. Thank you.
Any comments from CAC members in Modesto?
Yeah, this is Ned Liba. I'd be honored to be a representative of Merced, but I'm actually a representative of San Joaquin County.
Noted. Thank you. We will make that edit.
Any comments in Bakersfield? Any comments here in Fresno?
Yeah, I'll go for public comment. Are there any public comments in Bakersfield on the minutes?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Any public comments in Modesto on the minutes?
No public comments in Modesto.
Thank you. And seeing none in Fresno and none online.
Minutes are approved with the correction stated. We'll go ahead and move on to item 5, public comment. This time is made available for comments from the public on matters that are not on the agenda. It is requested that no comments be made during this period on items on the agenda. The public may make comments on each CAC agenda item during the time allowed for public comments. Attention is called to the fact that the CAC is prohibited by law from taking any action on discussion of matters that are not on the agenda.
Do we have any public comments in Modesto?
No public comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Bakersfield, do you have any public comments?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Seeing none in Fresno and none online.
We'll go ahead and move to item 6, chair comments. I just want to thank everyone for being here. I know it's a hard time of the year to show up. So thank you all for helping to make quorum so we can conduct business today. We'll go ahead and move on to the executive director comments.
Good morning. How are you guys doing today? Hope you guys had a lovely Thanksgiving weekend with your family, and welcome back. Holiday season is officially began. So hope you guys have a great one. I have a few items today. As you know, we have another tough state budget year ahead of us, and it's getting even tougher from what you've been hearing and reading. But the district, we're still working very hard on many fronts to ensure that the Valley still gets their piece of the pie. And even though it's going to be difficult, we're trying to make sure that we get the funding that the Valley needs. So we're still working very hard on that front. You're going to see some examples in the Cleaner Act item today of some of the funding requests or programs that will benefit from additional incentive funding. We're also currently in our wood burning season, which is a comprehensive strategy that reduces particulate matter emissions during poor air quality. It includes our very successful fireplace and wood stove incentive program, outreach and public education to make sure residents understand what it means when there is poor air quality and bad dispersion and what to do and not to burn. And really appreciate the CAC. You've continued to support this very successful program and make sure that it's successful. Just give a quick recap on our 2-day governing board study session, which was very successful. Some of you were there and really appreciate your attendance. The chair of the CARB board and the executive director also attended and spoke at that meeting. It was very engaging and, had a lot of good conversation, discussion with those. Couple of the items are being presented to the CAC today. We had discussion on wildfire prevention and response strategy and collaboration opportunities with state land management agencies. And we've gotten a lot of input from the CAC on these types of issues in the past. We spoke about Cleaner Act challenges and opportunities, which we'll be having a discussion about here today. We had a discussion on current and emerging alternative fueling initiatives and opportunities, which is a very important topic. Also, we talked about potential challenges and opportunities to address ag land transitions. As you know, that's a pretty important topic of today as well, with Sigma and still ongoing drought, even though we have foggy conditions today. We spoke about healthier living schools and a number of other items, but it was a very good 2-day study session and very engaging. And again, appreciate all those that attended. We also have our end of the year governing board meeting on December 18th. will be presenting one of our compliance staff with the Rodney Schwartzendruber Outstanding Inspector Award, which is a great achievement. This is an annual award presented by the California Air Pollution Control Officers Association. It's recognizing outstanding accomplishments for an air compliance inspector. So one of our compliance staff will be presented with that award. We're also getting the GFOA award, which is the Government Finance Officers Association Award for outstanding recognition and excellence in government finance. So we'll be receiving that again for I don't know how many years, but we continue to receive that award for all the work we do in that area, and a couple of other items which we'll be publishing our agenda item I believe next week. One more item, air quality. Give you an quick update on air quality progress. As you know, air quality continues to improve in the San Joaquin Valley based on all the work that's being done by all the stakeholders, the businesses, Valley residents, and everyone that's doing their part. We saw one of our best ozone seasons actually this past in 2025. We're still non-attainment for the 1997 8-hour ozone standard. I know we just had a great achievement for the 1997 PM 2.5 standard, but this year we saw values below that standard. So gives us hope that maybe really soon that we will be in attainment of that standard as well. Particulate matter values, PM 2.5 values, are also looking really good this year. We still have 28 and a half days left of the year, so I don't want to jinx us by saying anything crazy, but we are looking good in that area as well. And you'll see some of these charts, these progression charts of how air quality is trending down in the Cleaner Act item today. But overall, things are looking pretty good. Obviously, still quite a bit of challenges ahead of us, but there's also good news to report. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Are there any member comments in Bakersfield? Seeing none. Any member comments in Modesto? Seeing none. Any member comments here in Fresno?
Shiraz, are you able to disclose who's receiving the awards for at the governing board, or is that still top secret? The compliance staff?
Supervisor Dave Board in the South. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other comments in Fresno? Mr. Coon?
One resolves, well, I'm not going to talk about the 97 because we're going to get it done before I die. You have to get it done. Question, on the budget side, is there plans right now to meet with some key folks to get us ready for January so that even in the governor's office, being that Ms. Sanchez was in the governor's office and now she's the chair of ARB, is there plans to meet with some of our local folks with industry and others here to try to pull together a plan? It's nice to go to Sacramento. I mean, but during the holidays, that freeway is not a nice freeway. So if there's plans to meet with some of our local officials, as well as with a group of us, so we can plan the strategy of how we are going to attempt to do that. Because talking with others, I'm hearing that it's not even going to be a good year in 26 for 27 year, even when this governor leaves, leaving us in a shambles. But is there plans to do that, Shiraz, before January starts?
Yeah, thank you, Manuel. Like I said, there's a lot of work that's happening even now, and a lot of discussions happening, and a lot of meetings. So I definitely think that continue to meet with local and people in Sacramento. I think it's going to be important. So you'll see more of that happening over the next month, weeks. Those conversations are going to be ongoing because I think if we don't continue to advocate, then as you know, that if we don't get our name in there, we get left behind. So there's going to be a lot of work done in this area for sure.
Would that also include the $1 billion that is currently now available, I guess, for the year of 26? There's probably 100 people wanting that
Right.
$1 billion.
There's discussions happening on how do we get some of that funding allocated to the valley. So discussions are happening on those.
Okay.
Thank you, Manuel.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to item 8, verbal report from California Air Resources Board.
Through the chair, just for the record, I wanted to state Ms. Gutile and Mr. Savage have both joined the meeting.
Thank you. Welcome, Mark.
Hi, good morning. So my name is Mark Hickson. I'm manager of the Central Valley Air Quality Planning section in the Air Quality Planning and Science Division at CARB. Today I'll be sharing updates from October and November meetings, and also I wanted to introduce my colleague Shayla Ott. She will be providing a list of upcoming meetings for December and January. First, I wanted to share an update on behalf of CARB staff on SB 253 and SB 261. We were unable to have staff from those programs attend today's meeting, but they were able to provide an update to us. CARB is currently in the process for a Q1 2026 board item for SB 253 and SB 261. Including how fees should be structured, and for SB 253 specifically, what dates should be established as the 2026 deadline for Scope 1 and 2 reporting. CARB has begun discussing SB 253's Scope 3 requirements, for which reporting begins in 2027. In September 2025, CARB released SB 261 draft guidance and the preliminary list of covered entities released. To help validate the information in CARB's preliminary list of entities for the purpose of estimating fees, CARB sought stakeholder feedback through a voluntary survey tool. Most recently, an enforcement advisory was issued with guidance to stakeholders in light of a recent court order that applies solely to SB 261. The public docket for entities voluntarily submitting their climate-related financial risk report under SB 261 is also now open through July 1st, 2026. These two recent developments to SB 261 occurred after our update was finalized in today's agenda, so what I'm speaking to right now won't be reflected in the update we provided to Katrina. So we can provide links to those after the meeting, and links for all other related documents, meetings, workshops, and regulatory guidance are included in our update in this agenda, as well as contact information for any questions regarding these two regulations. Next, I wanted to move on to the October board meeting. There was one consent item and 3 discussion items. The consent item considered the appointment of board member Diane Takborian as co-chair of the AB 617 Community Air Protection Consultation Group, which the board voted to approve. The discussion items included the first annual update on California state implementation plans, an informational update on Executive Order N-27-25 regarding zero emission vehicles, and an update on California Satellite Methane Project. The first annual update on California state implementation plans included an informational presentation by CARB staff on ozone and PM 2.5 planning efforts, including the recently approved redesignation request for the Valley's attainment of the 1-hour ozone standard, and the redesignation request and maintenance plan that are currently under development for attainment of the 1997 65 microgram per meter cubed 24-hour standard, and 15 microgram per meter cubed annual standard. The presentation also discussed negative impacts from recent illegal federal actions. CARB staff are continuing to assess the impacts from the federal actions to the SIP, transportation conformity, emissions inventory, and future regulatory development. Staff have been working to identify potential SIP solutions to the issues created by the federal actions as they relate to the plans currently before the US EPA. CARB has already taken action to clarify that its prior regulations remain operative and enforceable, and CARB staff are looking to bring proposed SIP revisions for some 70 ppb ozone attainment plans to the board in the first quarter of 2026. This item received a diverse range of comments from engaged community stakeholders, ranging from health impacts of pesticide application to accelerating the use of low NOx vehicles. And these can be viewed on the webcast and the comment docket linked in this update. Next, in early November, the board held a joint public meeting with the Climate Transportation Commission and the Department of Housing and Community Development. The agenda included informational items on potential effects of the illegal resolutions on California's Clean Air Act waivers, including Advanced Clean Cars 2, Advanced Clean Trucks, and Heavy Duty Omnibus. The loss of these waivers is expected to worsen regional air quality and have negative impacts on human health. The implications to transportation conformity were also highlighted, including the inability to rely on emissions from California regulations that were tied to the waivers. In response, CARB staff have spent months to develop off-model adjustment factors for use with the MFAC 2021 model to address impacts on transportation conformity, as well as develop SIP revisions. Regional agencies discussed implications to plans and funding for transportation projects, including at-risk projects in the San Joaquin Valley totaling several billions of dollars. Those areas at risk of failing to meet their current SIP-approved emission budgets without crediting reductions from CARB programs, however, will require a SIP revision approved by US EPA for new emissions budgets. On November 24th, CARB received a letter from US EPA approving the use of off-model adjustment factors for MFAC 2021 for transportation, conformity, and SIP development. And on November 20th, the board held a public meeting to consider proposed amendments to the landfill methane regulation, which aim to reduce methane emissions from large solid waste landfills by improving collection and control of landfill methane emissions, utilizing advances in technology and research, increasing stringency, streamlining reporting, and supporting data transparency. The board voted to approve the amendments after thorough deliberation and discussion. Staff will continue to engage with stakeholders on implementation and future changes to the regulation. And now I'll turn it over to Shayla Ott, who recently joined CARB to lead SIP planning efforts for the San Joaquin Valley. And she will speak to the emergency vehicle regulation item that was postponed and other upcoming events. And take it from there, Shayla.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you to the Citizens Advisory Committee for having me. I look forward to working with you all more in the future. So I'll be sharing about upcoming public workshops, meetings, and hearings, as Mark said, starting with the postponement of the public hearing to consider proposed amendments to the on-road heavy-duty engine and vehicle omnibus, low-carbon fuel standard regulations, and to permanently adopt the emergency vehicle emissions regulations. So this hearing was originally scheduled for November 20th, and is postponed to a future date that that has not been scheduled yet. So another notice will follow in the future with additional information on the rescheduled hearing. And if there are any updates, we can report back on our next update. Next, a public meeting of the Community Air Protection Consultation Group will be held on December 3rd, 2025, which is tomorrow, from 9:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. And the consultation group advises the board on implementation of the statewide strategy under AB 617. And they will be discussing the draft charter, and a program update will be given by CARB staff at the meeting. Next, the California Air Resources Board invites you to participate in the Drive Forward Heavy Duty Vehicle Standards and Strategies public workshop tomorrow as well, from 9:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. The workshop will be led by CARB staff and will discuss potential rulemakings and other strategies to reduce medium and heavy duty vehicle emissions in the state. And professional landscapers are invited to participate in a work group hosted by CARB to discuss recent updates to the small off-road engine regulations that impact new engines used in landscape equipment. The next meeting will take place on December 3rd, tomorrow as well, from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. And the meeting, they will discuss incentives for zero emission landscaping in that meeting tomorrow. Next, as part of the Drive Forward Truck Forum, there will be a ZEV infrastructure, so zero emission vehicle infrastructure public meeting on December 8th from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m., which will focus on proactive grid upgrades being made to support future electric vehicle charging infrastructure for fleets under the Advanced Clean Fleets regulation. And next, CARB will host a public information session on the Clean Fleet Connect tool on December 9th of this year from 1 to 3 p.m. And the Clean Fleet Connect tool is a new voluntary tool designed to highlight medium and heavy duty zero emission vehicle fleets and support the state's air and clean air and public health goals. And CARB invites you to a monthly evening community meeting. These occur monthly. They provide updates on clean transportation incentives. The next monthly meeting will be on December 16th, 2025 from 5 to 7 p.m. And for CARB board meetings, the board will be hosting public meetings in January and February 2026, for which agendas will be available 10 days prior to the meeting date. And a board meeting will not be taking place for this month, December. And that concludes our updates. We're happy to take any questions or comments you might have about any of the updates we shared today. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments in Bakersfield?
Yes, I have a comment. I don't know where I missed or whatever, but are we going to, on emergency ambulances and other vehicles associated with medical, is that a deadline for them to change over to electric, or what's the end results there? And second, if they do have to remove their those heavy duty trucks or emergency vehicles, would that put a burden on a cost of the raising the price for those emergency services that would be borne by the citizens here, they have emergency, their cost of ambulance go up from 5,000 to 6,000, whatever per case, because we're implementing something that's going to raise the cost of the transportation. That's the question I have.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. And I think the way this item is worded is a little deceptive. It's actually emergency regulation and not emergency vehicle, but the way it's worded, I can see why it sounds like it's addressing emergency vehicles, and that's not the intention. I think it's just the way this item is worded. So it's actually addressing a broad set of vehicles and is not a targeted regulation at emergency vehicles. So that's unfortunately just the way it's worded. It's really not, some regulation that's addressing, say, ambulances or things of that nature. It's not doing that at all.
Thank you. I sit on the board for Emergency Medical Care Advisory Board. And like I said, I haven't heard anything at all on any issues of on this end anyway about any changes from the medical vehicles. So thank you for your comment.
You're welcome.
Any questions or comments in Modesto? Seeing none, any questions or comments here in Fresno? Mr. Cunha?
Yes, Mark, thank you again for a great presentation. This is, you deserve an A and to be put in the front of the classroom, not in the back seats of the classroom. Really appreciate ARB's new approach, and having an actual document in front of us is really great. So first thing, thank you again and the team for doing that, as well as Dr. Cliff and the new chair. My question becomes, we're going to go after landscape maintenance people and there's programs that have been discussed for off-road landscape maintenance people. The question I have, to touch that category, if I'm not mistaken, you have to get a waiver. 209E has to be granted to regulate those engines by the manufacturers under 175 horsepower. And has CARB been granted that to landscape equipment? Because here's the problem. What you're doing to landscape equipment affects my farmers, because we use the same equipment in various applications on our farms, etc., in our vines or in our trees or whatever it is. They don't make, Honda doesn't make a vineyard saw to cut vineyards versus cutting down landscape trees in a yard. I'm really greatly concerned because of that. But here's the other thing, Mark, that I think needs to be brought to CARB. Let's don't use the word incentives anymore, because you're not going to be giving any money. There's no money to give. So you're putting a premise out there, or the staff is just proposing this, that there's incentive funding. There ain't enough incentive funding money because there is no money. The farmer program has been stripped. Ag Burn has been stripped. Even the car program and other programs have been stripped to provide funds for the choo-choo train and to provide funds to the fires in this state out of the climate fund. And it really bothers me, though, that in the landscape, we talk about incentives when there is no money out there for these folks. And the communications by CARB to the landscape world, I will tell you this, they don't know what you guys are doing to them. they have no idea. The staff has not reached out to that population on educating them on what's going on at all. And so I think there's a real total disconnect. So there's several questions in that I would like to have some answers if possible, and a discussion before we go down the road of making these people have to buy electric, and then the electric fails. But again, to be misguided and say there's money to be got by the state, and if the state's going to run it, God be with us, because the truck program is the biggest disaster run by ARB in incentives in this history. So if it's run by local air districts, I have more faith. But again, I have a question on that 209. The second thing, all of these meetings in December, a lot of people are trying to finish up the year, and to try to attend these truck hearings and these times is going to put a tremendous amount of pressure. I don't know if it's deliberate, knowing that people cannot attend those workshops because they're on top of each other. I just have a great concern if this is, excuse my term, a deliberate mode by CARB to know that they can say they held public meetings, but where people can't attend on both sides of the aisle, both sides of the aisle. Lastly, the emergency question is absolutely online. That executive order by the governor is to go and proceed forward even without the waivers. I believe that's wrong, and I believe I'd like to know even more. If somebody doesn't volunteer into that, are they going to be sued, or are they going to be in violation in the year 28 if in fact things change? Because I believe that executive order is defiant of the waiver not being granted. So we're going to put businesses in bad situations. And the last comment, Chair, and I apologize, I don't have any faith in the infrastructure at all. Right now, you have two massive natural gas generator systems in this valley, Lodi and Bakersfield, that are running on natural gas to provide power for people to power up their electric vehicles. Shame on that. Here we're using natural gas and we're saying it's all electric, but the infrastructure is not there at all. And every time I see that, and I'm just thinking, where is the power? Where is the infrastructure? And yet we're mandating these things. And the power cost is going through the roof. And I think we need to talk about that, of what does that PG&E going back, or the utilities going back and doing another rate increase in 2030 by 27% increase. This will be the most expensive state in the world for power. So a long dissertation, Chair, but I think I appreciate all these things in front of us, though, because now we actually have something to look at and touch and feel. So, Mark, those are some of my concerns, and I know you cannot address them, but I think the staff definitely owes the community of businesses and others the proper hearing times, and not being shoved down our throats and say that they held one and only a few people came to it. It's only because of the time of the year. I don't know why we don't have one on Christmas Day. I mean, come on, or Christmas Eve or Black Friday. Could have did it on Black Friday. So I'm just very disappointed. Thank you.
Mark, can you send that update, please? Just send it to Katrina and share, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Manuel, for the comments. We'll definitely pass those along in our summary to our managers, and then anything that we can reply back to you on directly to address any of the questions, we'll send those through Katrina. And then if there are items where we want to have staff from these programs come to an upcoming CAC, we will make sure that happens as well. But I really appreciate the feedback.
Thank you for that. Ms. Brown?
Hi, Mark. I have probably the easiest question you're going to get. Early on in your presentation, you said something about the federal US EPA approved calculation adjustment. Can you remind me of what that's in reference to?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this was late breaking in that it did happen in that interim time between our update getting summarized and sent out and us receiving the notification. But the IMFACT 2021 model, that's the model that's used to calculate emissions from on-road motor vehicles. Once the waivers were revoked by Congress, that meant that that model was no longer accurately representing the emissions from vehicles in California. And so our staff worked with EPA to develop adjustment factors to revise that model so that those emissions can be used once they're adjusted for things like state implementation plans and conformity determinations for transportation. So where MPOs and COGS, they'll have to calculate if their emissions are meeting the budgets in our plans. The model can now be used for those purposes. And there are actually links available on our website that we can pass along to the CAC that have the letter itself, the adjustment factors, the details, how to use them, and all that information in detail. So we can make sure to pass those along.
Would be great.
Thank you so much, Mark. That's
Yeah,
perfect.
that'd be super.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I have a couple questions. For the Drive Forward Truck Forum, it's the focus, there will be a focus on proactive grid upgrades being made to support future electric vehicle charging infrastructure for fleets. My question is, who pays for that infrastructure update? Do you know that answer?
That's a great
Where's
question.
the funding coming from?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not plugged into that program, pardon the pun. So I will need to reach out to staff leads. And if that's a direct question you'd like to respond to, we could include that too in a follow-up update.
Please.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And then my other question has to do with the clean transportation incentives for Cleaner California. There's been a lot of incentive programs for lower income people to get into EV vehicles for a cleaner environment. One of the issues that we're having that I've been made aware of by my constituents is lack of charging infrastructure, which was talked about today and continues to be an issue. But recently there is the talk of the per mile charge, which also will provide a burden for those people that we have now encouraged to go from gas vehicles into EV vehicles. They're having to pay extra fees to charge at a public charging facility. And now it looks like they're going to be charged a per mile fee, which seems to be more than what the gas tax would have cost them if they would have stayed in a gas powered vehicle. So I just don't understand where we're heading with this. And I know you probably can't answer that, but it just doesn't seem like it was very well thought out before all of these things started being pushed. And I just don't know what to tell my residents. So anything that you can give us that would clarify some of these, the why behind some of these decisions, or any information at all would be very helpful.
Great. Yeah, I made a note for that to reach out again to that same program staff to see what, I guess you would say, the thinking is behind the per mile charge and the burden on low income households. And I don't know if there's any sort of remediation of that in some way, or what the thinking was or the calculus, but maybe they can provide more information on that.
And I honestly, I think it goes beyond even just low income households. There's, median income households that have, tried to do their part in making a clearer environment that will also be impacted as well. So it does reach beyond that, but thank you. I would appreciate any follow-up.
Sure. I'll take that back with me.
Any other
through the
questions or
chair.
comments? Sure.
Yes. John in Bakersfield. Mark, I'm not sure if you're aware of now CARB has, in some instances, according to my people, constituents around me, is including off-road vehicles in the CTC program, requiring them to be tested and locking out their registration abilities at the DMV, which I get that had to happen for some vehicles, but when it's an off-road vehicle and it has its own category, which I believe is referenced as doors, and now we have to have it in the CTC program and then test this, once and then twice and then 3 times and 4 times. I'm not sure if you're aware of it, and if you are, I kind of like to get a little background on how that came about.
Okay, thanks, John. Yeah, that's not something I'm involved with, but again, we can reach out to program staff and try to get a written response back in a future update. And if it's something where
Okay.
you'd want
Yeah,
program staff to speak directly, we could also try to arrange that.
Yeah, that'd be good, because I've noticed that it's the same vehicle, the same unit, same type of units. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. And it's been from multiple companies in my area. So I figure the easiest way to get to the bottom of it is figure out what's actually happening. Maybe something was an accident. Maybe it wasn't.
Okay.
Maybe I put it on a radar and I shouldn't have.
Yeah, well,
Thank you.
I'll reach out and see if I can get a response, but if there's more nuance or details where there's a specific example, maybe we'd want to interact on that more directly too.
I can give you those if you want to reach out to me directly.
Okay, great. I'll see what response I get, and then if we need to interact more, I'll work through Katrina to make sure we connect there.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Mark and Shayla, for your presentation, and we look forward to the follow-up.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and move on to item number 9, update on attainment plans and rules. Tim.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, good morning. Again, Tim Frankwist, Director of Air Quality Planning. I'll give a brief update this morning because agenda item 11, we'll do some deep dive. So I'll just kind of touch on some of the main items. And then, like I said, during that item 11, we can really get into some of the details there. But starting with the 1-hour ozone maintenance plan in September, we did get a final decision by the EPA approving that plan. That terminated the 185 non-attainment fee for that standard. On the flip side, also in September, we did get a failure finding to attain the 1997 ozone standard. That actually triggers the 185 fee for permitted sources for that standard. We also did, as we announced in July, get a determination of attainment for the 1997 annual PM 2.5 standard. We're waiting for EPA to make a final determination. We would expect that they can do that sometime in the next few months, hopefully soon. And then lastly, we have a proposed approval on our contingency measures for the 1997 8-hour ozone standard. That's EPA making a decision on the smog check, carbon smog check. That's open for comment right now and would close sometime in mid-December. Turning to the particulate standards, again, we did achieve the 1997 24-hour and the annual PM 2.5 standard. There, we are working on a maintenance plan. So part of our work there is with CARB on the motor vehicle emissions budget. So there was a bit of a holdup you heard with the MFAC models. It looks like we're working through that issue, so we should be back on track to develop that plan and hopefully get that from the board here in the next several months. And then just lastly, on rule commitments related to PM 2.5 plans, we are continuing scoping work, research, and analysis on the Rule 4550, the conservation management practices, and also 4901, the wood burning fireplaces and heaters. We did hold on that rule. We did hold a public comment, a stakeholder meeting this past spring. We'll schedule more in this subsequent months and hopefully finalize that in the next fiscal year here. And then lastly, on contingency measures for the 2008 ozone standard, we do have work being done, analysis again, research and scoping on Rule 4601. Those are in several other coding rules to fulfill potential commitments for the contingency measure. And with that, that concludes my update, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions for Tim in Bakersfield? Being none, any questions in Modesto?
We have one question in Modesto.
Sure.
Hi, this is Chris Savage. Are you able to hear me okay? I'm not near a mic.
Yes.
Thank you. Tim, thanks for the update. I've got a question on 185 fees. Actually, a request and then a comment. So can you, for the next meeting, bring a summary of the total amount of 185 fees that have been collected up to this point, both total and on an annual basis? Ultimately, where I'm headed with this is we're now going to be in a perpetual cycle of paying 185 fees. And I recognize it's a Clean Air Act driven mandate, not necessarily something directly in control of the district, but it is effectively an add-on tax for stationary sources that if you take a look at the boards on the wall where you cut emissions by 94% in the time we've been investing. So I want to resurface the issue again and have any conversations that we might have that would look at either reducing or preferably eliminating those fees. And I realize that's a very big ask because we're not in full control of the conversation, but I want to re-elevate it. So if you wouldn't mind bringing that back next time, I'd be appreciative.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, we'll make sure we have that information.
Okay. And if you do have any comments about any opportunities to address it now, I would love to hear them. But my suspicion is you might want to go back and think about it a little bit.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, I think that would be great. Yeah, let me confer with the Shroz and the team here, and we get a much more pointed and safe answer.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks, Tim.
Any questions or comments in Fresno? Mrs. Brown?
And on Rule 4550 with CMPs, are you intending to have another public workshop before it's brought before the governing board?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, absolutely. Yeah, we are in the very, very preliminary stages of that. I'm just going to get our heads wrapped around kind of the issues. And we've kind of talked in the past. There's a lot of other factors that go into that. We're looking at obviously the fallow lands. And so there's a much, much bigger discussion. So I would expect several probably stakeholder meetings, a lot of other meetings kind of inform that process.
Any other questions in Fresno or comments? Being none, thank you so much. We'll move on to item 10, public communication on Valley air quality progress and continuing efforts.
All right, good morning, Chair, members of the committee. I'm John Klassen, Director of Air Quality Science, and Jamie will be joining me here in just a moment to tag team this, but we're going to talk about how we communicate air quality progress that we are making in the Valley and thinking about different ways to present that information to make it more meaningful to different groups that we work with. So I'll provide a little bit of background here, then Jamie will go over some of the outreach details in this item. So as we talk about often, we know we're in a challenging area with our topography, with meteorology that places a bowl or a lid over the bowl of the valley. We're surrounded by mountain ranges, and this picture here is from a winter season a few years ago where we have fog trapped in the valley going across the entire Central Valley of California. And this is pretty much exactly what it looks like right now as well. This has been our reality the past couple of weeks where it's very stable, a lot of moisture in the air from rains we've had recently. And so we have fog all the way up and down the valley, even going into the Bay Area the past few weeks. So this really kind of highlights the challenge that we have in these conditions, different sources of pollution as they emit pollution that can kind of build up over time, trapped in the bowl where we are, and that can lead to higher concentrations of particulate matter during the winter. Then in the summer, it's the opposite. It's focused on on ozone when we have more of the heat and sunlight. In addition to those challenges, we have significant goods movement corridors throughout the region, I-5 and 99 running up and down the valley, a lot of heavy duty truck traffic and vehicles running every day throughout the valley, adding to the challenge that we have. And so to address this, our board has adopted a number of attainment plans and strategies over the decades to reduce emissions. And the image that we have here on the slide is what we have in our rooms here, showing how much NOx has been reduced over time since 1980. This is nearly a 45-year period now, where we've had about a 94% reduction in stationary sources, and it's about a 75% reduction in NOx overall. And NOx is important to us because it's the cornerstone of a lot of our ozone and PM 2.5 planning. So getting those NOx reductions helps reduce ozone and PM 2.5. And this doesn't happen on its own. This is happening through billions of dollars invested by the ag industry, businesses, agencies, and residents doing what they can to make these improvements. On top of that, CARB has adopted a number of very stringent mobile source measures over time that have also helped get big reductions in NOx throughout the region. And all of this combined really represents the toughest emissions control program in the nation when we compare us to other regions. On top of that, we also have a very strong incentive program, and over the years that we've been operating it, about $7.5 billion have been invested through both public and private entities. And while we've made a lot of progress, we still have to make more progress and get more reductions to meet all of the air quality standards in front of us. But we have made some progress, and I wanted to highlight here briefly on the right-hand side here, these 6 different tiles you see, these are the 6 criteria air pollutants defined under the Clean Air Act. So these are the 6 pollutants that have different standards set by EPA that we have to meet. So 4 of these 6, those bottom 4, we are in full attainment of those. It's the top 2, ozone and particulate matter, that we're still working on attaining all of those standards within those. But we have attained some of them. And just briefly, for ozone, we've attained the 1-hour ozone standard a number of years ago. We're still working on attaining the 8-hour ozone standards. And then within particulate matter, we've attained the PM10 standard, the 65 microgram 24-hour standard, and the 15 microgram annual standard just last year, actually, for that one. And we're continuing to progress towards attaining the other PM 2.5 standards. And our attainment plans that we're developing are addressing those remaining standards. So just to show you where we are with PM 2.5, this is what's called the design value. This is the official metric we use to determine whether we're in attainment of a standard. And if you go on the left-hand side of this, that orange bar there, that's where we used to be roughly 25 years ago for PM 2.5 in the valley. Our average concentration of PM 2.5 was about 25 micrograms per meter cubed. Going back in time, then these blue bars here, these represent our most recent values for the year 2024. And each of these bars represents a different air monitoring site in the San Joaquin Valley. So this kind of represents the geography across the area of where we are. And you can see that all of these different locations are now below that 1997 standard line, which is great that we're finally there. And now we need to keep progressing and making progress towards getting to that 2012 standard line, and then the 2024 standard line. But that standard is being looked at by EPA right now, so that may not survive in the future. But if you look closely at this, you can see that about half of these areas in the valley are already attaining that 2012 standard, which is good. We just have a handful of sites we need to continue to make progress to get them all below that blue line. And then on the ozone side, it's kind of a similar story, where if you go back in time about 20 years ago, back in 2004, the design value for ozone was about 115 parts per billion. And you can see that progressively getting lower over time. And then in 2024, this most recent year, we are very close to that 1997 standard. We're just above that line. We're hoping we'll get there in the next few years to cross that threshold, and then continue to progress towards those more stringent standards set in 2008 and 2015. Those are the yellow and the red line just below there. And so when we look across all of the air quality standards for PM 2.5, for ozone, for PM10, when we look at how we're doing, whether we're meeting the standard or above the standard, we see a lot of change over time as well. So in these 3 different donut charts here, you can see how this has changed. So if you look on the left-hand side, in the year 2002, about 47% of the days across the valley's counties were violating an air quality standard. That's the dark part of that donut. And as you look towards the right-hand side, you see that number decreasing to 25% in 2012 and then only 13% in 2024. So last year's data across all the counties, 87% of the days that we experienced were attaining all of the air quality standards. We had healthy air. So it's really nice to see how much that has changed over time, but that 13%, that dark part in 2024, we need to still keep focusing on that 13% of days to keep minimizing that even more to attain all of the standards in front of us. So I'll pass to Jamie now to talk about our outreach efforts and different ways we're thinking of how to communicate this information.
And first of all, I want to apologize. I run a little cold and I feel like it's about 30 degrees in here. So I thought I'd put on a little hat. John just told you a lot of really good news, in my opinion. And we work really hard to try and get that information out to the public. I'm just going to give you a quick overview. A lot of this is stuff that you've seen before, but then I'm going to talk about the little different spin that we're putting on it with this particular item. So our current outreach efforts are really aligned to the district core values and our cleaner goals. And of course, continuous improvement is a part of that, which is why this item kind of got put together. Our board has basically put 3 key outreach objectives that kind of guide everything we do. That's to encourage cleaner actions by residents, businesses, organizations. That's both a voluntary action that they might do on their own or taking advantage of our grant programs. We want to encourage the public to protect their health during those poor air quality episodes. We still do occasionally have them, although they are less and less. How can they protect themselves? Where do they go to get information? That type of thing. And then third, and probably the one that aligns most with this item, is making sure that we're providing accurate science-based information on the air quality progress and the challenges that we still have. And we do that through a variety of different ways. One of the best ways where we kind of get into the meat of this every year is through our award-winning annual report to the community. It's in both English and Spanish. It's online in a PDF version, and it's available hard copies in all of our regions. Feel free to grab one as you're walking out of the office today if you don't already have one. Usually comes out about April, and it's based on the previous year. We also do a lot of paid advertising. That includes both advertising campaigns on traditional media and social media. And then, of course, kind of the new digital media. And that includes what they call the cord cutters, the over the top. This is your streaming services, your Hulu, your YouTube TV, that type of thing. We make sure that those messages are a little twofold. One, it's a message about the improvements that have been made and the challenges that we have. And then, of course, we do quite a bit about the grant programs and what's available, and then how the public can take those voluntary actions I talked about. We then push air quality tools. We have found over the last about 15 years that there used to be one tool, that was us, that was our fun little website that folks could go to get the most up-to-date, current, and reliable air quality information. There's now dozens of these types of tools. We really encourage folks to either use the tools that come directly from us, that's our website, or our app primarily. That's the middle graphic you see right there. Or if they don't want to use our information, to use EPA's information. And I will tell you that EPA's information is pulling from our monitoring network. It's reliable, it's quality assured, it gets updated and maintained on a regular basis. That would be EPA's Air Now, which is going to be the image on the left. And then if we're having wildfire smoke impacts, we encourage folks to use the EPA's fire and smoke map. What's great about that, which you really can't see from this graphic because we don't have a wildfire impacting us right now, but it will show smoke plumes and where the smoke is moving. So we want to make sure that people have that information, and then we kind of wrap around it. What do you do when we are having these poor air quality episodes? We have, and we've talked about this recently. I believe Heather was here just a couple of months ago talking about our Healthier Living Schools program. It is very vibrant. It is something that we're doing on a daily basis. We have big, exciting, if you're going to tune in or watch or attend our governing board meeting in December, we'll have our kids calendar winners. That's a part of this program, but it really is working with schools to give them information, talk about improvements, talk about challenges, and give them tools to make good decisions on campus to protect student health when air quality is poor, and also to encourage parents, administrators, teachers, and students in doing those things that actually help air quality. We do a lot of public engagement. We have a big email list of media contacts. We work directly with local meteorologists and reporters, news directors, the one or two opinion editors that are left in these things that are called newspapers. That's both in English and Spanish. We really make it that we are their first call when there's an air quality story. We do hundreds of events and presentations each year. And then, of course, we're constantly coming to you all, to the Citizens Advisory Committee, to our governing board and our Environmental Justice Advisory Group to make sure that we are getting input from you as some of our stakeholders and also communicating information to you. We try to respond to all media, agency, economic development, corporation, chambers of commerce, CBOs, professional organizations with any requests that they might have for air quality data. Because again, we really want folks to come to us first for the most accurate science-based data that is out there. We have a lot of online resources you're all familiar with, valleyair.org, our healthierliving.com, which is really our school's website, and then of course our wildfire page when we are seeing wildfire impacts. We issue a lot of air quality alerts and health advisories. I will tell you it's less than we used to because air quality is better. But when we do have one of these unusual events, we send out an air quality alert or a health advisor. We also coordinate with our county public health officers and directors. We coordinate, make sure that you all, our EJAG, our governing board, are aware of what's going on, our other partners. If it's a really extreme event, and I will tell you, in the 22 years I've been here, I think it's happened once. We even have a protocol in place for reaching out to hospitals, reaching out to sheriff's offices, reaching out to others if we do have one of those really extreme events. And I will tell you, 22 years, it's only happened once. To talk a little bit about why this issue is before you today and how this is a little bit different. We want to just double down on the importance of engaging the public in air quality. We want to make sure that the public really understands both the tremendous improvement that has been made and yet the challenges that we still have. Those standards are tough, and we want to make sure that people understand that getting those additional reductions to meet the standards is going to be difficult. We want folks to understand what happens if we don't meet those standards and that there are sanctions that might be triggered. There are federal highway funds that might be lost. So we want folks to really have a full understanding of the picture. We also want residents, businesses, partners to participate in emission reduction efforts. And if the public understands the success that we've had in the past, they are more likely to engage in success in the future to get those emission reductions that we need. And we are always looking, as I said, continuous improvement for strengthening these partnerships, for doing better outreach to really communicate this. One of the things that we're starting to see more and more is third parties who come in with air quality data that in some cases, we're not exactly sure where it might come from. One of the ones is the American Lung Association State of the Air Report. Now, we do know where this data comes from, but you might recall it's the one that in April comes out. It's usually around Earth Day, and we get an F. Lots of people get an F. It's on a county by county basis. Correct me, is it San Joaquin that got a D last year? Good job, San Joaquin. You're getting better. But really, it is a simplified grading system that doesn't fully reflect all of the improvements that have been made and the nuances into air quality. When you get an F, you think, oh, we're failing every day. The sky is falling, air quality is horrible. And that's not actually the truth. As you can see through John's donut charts that we show, there's just a handful of days every year we're not meeting the standards. And in many cases, many parts of the valley are meeting the standard. But because we're graded as one big entity, we have to have all our monitoring sites meeting the standard to meet that standard. What's also happening is we're starting to see on one of my favorite sites, like a Zillow or a Redfin, people are going just for fun, looking to see what their house is worth or their neighbor's house is worth. On some of those websites, they usually have like a walkability score, or they might have a school district score. They now will have an air quality or a heat index score. And sometimes those numbers are perhaps not as in line with the reality of what we're seeing here in the valley, what the data is showing us. Sometimes we're not even John's team has dug deep on some of these sites. We're not 100% certain, and they're not real upfront with showing where they're getting their data from. So we want to be the place that folks go to proactively communicate our information out through our documents, through partnerships with that. APCA is the Association of Air Pollution Control Agencies. That's the national organization. They put out a yearly report through CARB and EPA data. We want to make sure that we are not so much saying, American Lung Association, you're wrong. We don't want to disparage them. That doesn't seem like, that just is poking a fight that we want to be careful about. But we do want to say, and I will say in California, the top folks for the American Lung Association in California have been very open to saying, look at all the improvement the Valley's made. Look at all the progressive things the Valley is doing. Look at how investment is paying off in the Valley. And we're very thankful for those partnerships. And we're looking at ways to really proactively communicate accurate, data-driven information that then can help when, and I just took a call from one of our EDC partners. And I think that's on the next slide. Yes. We're beginning to work with our EDC partners because they've come to us and they have said, we were recruiting for doctors to go into our hospitals program, our big hospital network. And we got to the finish line and we're sitting on a Zoom with this doctor in another part of the country. And this doctor has said, hey, my spouse just let me know that you all got an F for the American Lung Association's air quality report, and we don't want to move there now, even though this was a beautiful package that you gave us to come out and work in your hospital. We are beginning to very proactively work with them to make sure that when that conversation happens, that they're ready to say, let me give you the full picture. Here's a document that we put together. Here is a flyer that we have. And I believe we have an example of the flyer in this document. If not, yes, thank you. An example of the flyer that's county by county specific that really gives a good overview of what it looks like in that particular area and how the information that they're maybe seeing on their Redfin, or if they just browsed something and got a little bit of information, is not really a true full picture of what's going on air quality wise. This is it. I knew I'd seen it somewhere. This is an example of that document. We've worked really closely actually with the Kern County EDC to put this together and give them tools that they need. We actually have this document and we'll make sure that it gets emailed out to everyone. We need to make a point to do that with all the different counties itemized. And we plan to make this as like a little insert every year in our annual report. So we'll update it every year, but really just a snapshot that our partners, whether they be an EDC or a chamber or really anyone, can share when they feel that maybe the full picture is not getting communicated to whoever their target group might be. We also want to make sure that we're working with our communities. Our community air protection program has really done a great job to reach out to maybe some of our smaller communities, maybe our rural communities, to make sure that they're getting accurate information as well. Often some of our smaller communities have better air quality than some of our larger communities. That's just based on the number of sources that might be in a community of 20,000 people versus 500,000 people. We want to make sure that they have access to that information as well, and that we're giving it to them in a way that is appropriate for the language needs and in the simplified format so it can really be shared with anyone. Looking ahead, we look for any ideas that you all might have today, but we're going to continue these efforts. We're going to continue to work for ways to engage these organizations that are putting this data out into the world to make sure that whenever possible, they can give some Valley-specific, more nuanced information about the improvements that have been made, and really strengthening these relationships with our partners, our economic development stakeholders, local governments, making sure that they have the tools that they need to be able to respond when they have these issues that come up. We really think that these types of collaborations, getting accurate, understandable, reliable air quality information out to the public is super important. And we want to continue to do that because as we continue to try and address the improvements that still need to be done, folks need to understand that the full picture and the success that we've had in the past. With that, we're happy to answer any questions or take any suggestions.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments or suggestions in Modesto?
I have a comment in Modesto.
Go ahead.
Hi, Jamie. I just really want to personally thank you on behalf of the Central Valley Chemical Safety Day. As you may not be aware, or this group may be aware, but we run the whole valley, the Central Valley, the same as the Air District. And we had Errol Villegas in Tulare, and we had Nick Pierce in Turlock, did a fabulous job. It was almost mirrored what you just presented today. And I think that was a great opportunity for you guys. And I really appreciate you guys coming to that event. You probably touched about 700 people in the industry. Thank you.
Well, and I want to thank you. Through the chair, I want to just say, I say on a regular basis, please invite us to your events. And then when you all do, we make sure we get the right people there. That was actually 2 of our permit managers. We sent kind of a high level because you guys are a little bit more of a technical group, but those are great opportunities for us. So thank you.
Absolutely.
This is
Any other-
Ned. I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
A quick comment or question. I got interested in this because there was an article in the Stockton Record back in the Pleistocene era that said more Valley residents died from air pollution, PM 2.5, than automobile accidents, and they had a graph. Well, that certainly caught my attention, but I don't see where we have actually projected the loss of life, let's say, from automobile accidents against PM 2.5. And we would think with all the reductions that we've had, that there'd be a significant reduction in mortality and morbidity year by year, decade by decade. And maybe you want to put that in your public information.
Yeah, we actually have had that. That used to be on the wall by the big poster that's on the wall with everyone. We actually had some cancer risk reduced and that type of thing. And basically, we wanted to just focus for now on this great chart that's all about reductions. But I think that's a great idea. I do think, and John, you can pipe in as well. And Ned, I know you know this because this has been something you've talked about multiple times. There hasn't been a ton of recent research on direct health impacts from air quality improvements. There has been a lot, but none of it's really been done in probably the past 10 years, probably. So that's one of the things that we're on a regular basis kind of advocating with some of our university partners to say, this may be something that you all want to dig into a little bit more and maybe update some of that information.
Any other questions in Modesto? Seeing none, any questions or comments in Bakersfield?
Yes, I just virtual. I don't know if our cameras, can you show that chart there?
But I know what you're pointing at because we've got one in our region too. If the cameras don't make it over there.
Way down. I mean, we did fantastic. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Yeah, from where it's current up to was back in 1980, I believe. My eyesight's not as good as it used to be. But at what cost? I'm sure we've gone down a little bit more for this year. It's going to be posted a little differently. But at what cost is it to get it down? The cost us the people, especially the lower income and middle class, to achieve it to get it down even lower. And how far is it realistically? I'm a kind of common sense type of person. How realistically are we able to go it down lower without bankrupting California even more what it is right now? But I know back in the early century, life expectancy back then is 34 years old to 45 years old. Now we're up to in the 70s plus in life expectancy, and I just look at the common sense part of it is what it's going to cost us to get it down lower without affecting people in the pocketbook, because as we all know, our money's not buying as much as it used to with the inflation and stuff. And I can tell that there's uncertainty in the world, because I just got back from Eastern Europe, and they all have concerns because they're under the United Nations is inputting. You see all these trash cans we have in our yard? It's over there too. And they're bitching about the people there and their costs. And they make a lot less income than we do. They only make about 1,000 a month on the average, up to highest 1,200 a month. And my income is not bad. I tell you what, I got a budget. I'm still trying to learn how to retire. You know, you make this much and now you're down this much. You're trying to budget, and it seems like you go to the store or you buy anything, your car breaks down. The cost of fixing it is so much. And in California, I have a business in Modesto, and I went over there to do business in Slovakia, and they have some equipment and stuff there. And they had new owners, and they're out looking for new equipment. That's what I went over there for. Italy beat me out. He got the contract. I didn't get the contract because I had to put in what the cost of me doing business in California and the cost of what they have in Italy. They're about half the cost. I just couldn't compete. You know, we have better equipment. We're going to port now in California. We can't even compete outside of our state. So most everything has to stay inside, and I'm not the only one. And people, when they do buy businesses, they take that business outside of California because of our issues that we have. I think it would be good is to find out what it's going to cost and what the impact is going to be on reducing that number. I think it's great that we can reduce it, but is it worth the cost analysis, the benefits versus what we're spending on it? And the health, I'm not too worried about because our health has gone up quite a bit. And I can say I've been to Mexico many, many times all over. And I tell you what, our air is so much cleaner. We don't burn tires in the streets or in the backyards or whatever to keep warm. But we came a long ways, and I think we did a good job. We spent billions of dollars just to get where we're at right now. But I just want to make sure how many more billions we're going to spend to get any more reduction at a cost of you and I. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Through the chair, if I could just have a few responses to that. And that's one of the really key questions that you're bringing up. Really good set of just considerations and questions. And like we said, like the progress we've made so far, looking at that chart, that has taken billions of dollars of investment through both incentive programs and also different industries putting on new emissions control equipment. So this has not been easy. It's not been cheap over the decades. And they keep making progress. It's going to take even more investment. And as time goes on, getting those further reductions gets more and more difficult. The technology can get more and more expensive. It's harder to acquire, to operate. And so it can take even more money, more investment to keep getting that progress and those reductions. So we talk about it a number of times, but incentive dollars is very helpful to help keep down that cost, to help industries jump in and replace equipment. But that's incredibly important to keep this going. And as we know, difficulties with the state budget, federal budget, we're continuing to advocate as hard as we can to get those dollars to help us continue to invest that money to make that progress. But that's something that's always considered when different standards are set up and we're looking at progress we're trying to make, just like what you're talking about, the benefits of attaining that standard versus the cost of investing to get those reductions. So that's something that always has to be considered and we have to keep thinking about going forward. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
May I add something to Orchel's speech?
Sure.
Okay, so just an example of the people I deal with, my constituents who know I'm part of this group. They have spent, if we take the company still in existence, $600 million since 2020. We did some quick math the other day at breakfast. So Kern County has spent $600 million. And so the reason I bring this up is we talk about the incentive piece, but the incentive piece doesn't apply to the companies who are in that the companies that were able to spend that money, they had to do it out of whatever they had left over, not given a raise, something else. And they're not able to get the incentives even when they were available because we're all part of larger organizations. And it kind of goes back to no one really wants fossil fuels, but electric cars have to have tires and they have to have things on them that require fossil fuels. But that's just food for thought. There's a lot of money since 2020 that's blown through Kern County into the 4F type diesel engines, and then trying to convert to electricity, and then getting electric depots set up on properties, even though they can't get the electricity there. I mean, there's been a ton of money spent. So I'm just going to back it up. I'm not trying to bitch about it. I'm just giving you some numbers to work with.
And through the chair, just real quick, and that's exactly why we want to make sure that folks know that that investment has worked. One of the things in talking with Kearney DC too is really making sure that the narrative, that the story is being told, that especially down in Kern County, all that investment is really making Kern the national energy leader. Between the diversity that's coming out of that county with regard to energy production and kind of how they have been forced, but yet I think have been incredibly innovative. And I think valley-wide, our business community, I mean, Manuel knows this, but hell or high water, they've been forced to be incredibly innovative. They've had the ag community's been able to get some incentives, but we all know that incentives only pay for a part of it. So that the point that John was making about the importance of that incentives and what Manuel was saying earlier in the meeting continues to be one of our top priorities.
I have one more thing. I just want to give more of a shout out to Stanislaus County. They came out and did an environmental inspection. They want me to produce a hazardous waste, where it went to, the paperwork for the last 3 years. And the lady that was out there did a hell of a good job. She went through everything. And at the same time, she explained to me everything. And it was good information and all that. And, and I learned, but being involved with one in Kern County too, I go through inspections, but they only had one little complaint. It was minor. And I didn't get written up. I had my checkbook out, just in case, but I didn't need it. But the only thing I was kind of out of compliance was I had some dirty rags in a container. I didn't have it marked dirty rags on a label on there. That was only it. And she put one on there and she says, you're in compliance, nothing negative, everything was fine. It made me feel good. I like it when they do the inspection to explain it and not just go ahead and trying to find something and make it hard on you. So I just want to thank Stanislaus County Environmental Department for what they did. I think it was a good information. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments in Fresno?
I want to say hello and thank you guys for your recent involvement in events up in Eastern Madera County. I know sometimes we're the ugly wildfire stepchild producing all the particulate matter and sending it down the valley for you guys to slop around in. A couple things, congratulations, and all this media is great. And as far as getting this information to our public up in the mountains, it would be great if we could have like this available as PDF slides in our kiosks and our government and health centers. We have the ability to roll this type of media on these devices as some, easy way to get some of this information out. And we know that people, of course, are incentivized by feeling good, as Orchel said, when, you get the prize that you did well, it motivates you to do better in the future. So maybe some programs also where we're recognizing heroes and things like that for when we change things out. We're starting to do that in Eastern Madera County. We're recognizing people who are doing extremely well with their modifying their homes or reducing their wildfire impact. So if you guys would like to get involved with us in those programs, that would be great. And then also a little off to the side here, the Governor Newsom signed executive orders N3525 on October 2025 to increase prescribed fire use in California by expediting processes. Has that been, have you guys had a chance to kind of compartmentalize that and see what that's going to do in regards to effects of, because we're up there with the wildfires, we're up there with the prescribed burning and increasing that. And we have a lot of wood burning stoves for sources of heat. And this is just going to add a little bit to the pile.
Yeah, through the chair, we are aware of that executive order. We read through that, discussed it, and we'll look at our program, see what we can do to be even more supportive if possible. But we're already very supportive of prescribed burning and fuel reduction projects. We feel like we try to support that and get out of the way as much as we can to let these things happen. But we'll be looking at our program to see if there's something else we can do to do even more.
Yeah.
Yes.
Then through the chair, we're also looking at kind of redeveloping a prescribed burn outreach plan that should hopefully kind of sit right along with what our land managers are doing to make sure that we're using all of our kind of avenues to get the word out to those who might be impacted by the fact that there's probably going to be some more smoke impacts moving forward.
Yes, both well done. Yes, the Lung Association is not our friend. And I can say it, you can't say it. They don't want to know the truth because if they keep the false information, they get funding to show how bad it is. And maybe we need to bring their executive down here and have them sit in front of that sign so you can explain to them in Braille of how much you have done since 2002 to now. Jamie, an idea, and I don't know. I don't approve of having the Lung Association start dictating what community to live in because of their false propaganda. That hurts people's jobs and movement because of just because of their own motivation to their own goal. Not the goal that you have done, and the gentlemen have spoken Bakersfield. How many millions? You spent $7 billion, their district. The industries have spent a huge amount, the oil industry, manufacturing, agriculture, just shut down ag burning. What other state or country has done that, even in California, other than just the 8 counties? Our other partners in the north and the south can burn. So I don't know if we send your chart, your pie chart, you call it homemade donuts, I guess, with the hole in the middle, Krispy Kreme, I guess, right? That immediately, when you said that, I was thinking of Krispy Kremes. It would have been nice to have a Krispy Kreme here today, but you're doing this, right? You could have given us all a Krispy Kreme and tied it into that, John. Nothing for Shiraz, though, at all, okay? But if we can get that chart to the Realtors Association of California, number 2, California Chamber, but all of the different chambers in the San Joaquin Valley, including the Hispanic Chamber of Fresno, Dora and her group, and others, as probably I can quote the greatest name that some of you are, let's see, no, some of you are not in that age group, but it's called The Rest of the Story by the greatest Paul Harvey. He would tell you a little bit, keep you going, you run off the road because you're waiting to hear. And then he finally come back and say, the rest of the story is. So I think it's time that we give the rest of the story versus of what the Lung Association has done for years. To be disingenuous, even with the farmer program, the tune-up car program, the replacement of the car program, the fireplace program. Not a word about that. So to me, very bad media by their part of being just and genuine 100%. Number two is to also work with the Construction Industry Association and Manufacturers Association, because those were the jobs are going to be coming and going. Let's get them this nice, beautiful Krispy Kreme. And maybe, John, you sent it, and Jamie, you sent a Krispy Kreme donut with this chart, in the email. So you say, open this up and have a Krispy Kreme donut. But really, the donut ain't going to appear out of the screen, but you'll get the idea. I think we need to now address to the other industries, associations, the truth. And I'm going to quote him, as Paul Harvey would say, let's give the rest of the story, because I'm getting tired of hearing how bad you have done when that dang chart and your 3 donuts and what that 13% is going to cost us. Stationary sources are at 97, Shiraz maybe, or John, 98% already. How much more can we go after stationary sources? How much do we go after having real infrastructure for electrification, that our cities don't go broke and we don't kick people out of their houses because they got to go buy a dang electric water heater, okay? So those are my thoughts about the very unprofessional comments made by the Lung Association continuously. And that's wrong, very wrong. And how for them to talk about health. And I think even Liba's comments about how much have we really reduced in public health costs from 2002 to now. You've done a tremendous job of reduction there. So, Madam Chair, I just think we need to give the staff a tremendous applause, but also have the board, and for Shiraz to take this back, is that let's put out an all-F campaign for the rest of the story to be told, versus allowing the bad story out there to the doom and gloom. Because as the chair made it very clear, what happens to the lower income level, the medium-sized income over the next 5 to 10 years? What happens to all those jobs and that cost? The per mile fee against electrics, or if you drive a gas car, the people are going to get hit the farthest is the farm workers. They have to drive to their jobs. We're shutting down the west side because of Sigma, so the workers got to drive further. We're going to abandon the town of Huron, or abandon the town of Avenel, or maybe Fireball. Come on. So I don't know. I just feel like giving you $1 million tomorrow, $2 million, and tell the rest of the story to these other industries. But to have this year, to have the Lung Association tell people not to move here because our areas, you're dying. It's, the London fog, So I'll stop there because this is really gets me. But great job to the entire district and to the board. But Jamie, you and John, for getting, especially Jamie, your vigilance of getting the rest of the story out there. I think it's great. And yeah, let's don't stop. Let's keep going after other ways that we can circumvent what the Lung Association's misrepresentation does. So thank you. Sorry.
Are you sure you're done?
Sorry.
Just kidding. Any other questions or comments on this one? Okay, we'll go ahead and move to item 11, Clean Air Impact Implementation Challenges and Opportunities.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, again, Tim Frankquist, the Director of Air Quality Planning. I'm here with Todd DeYoung, who will kind of tag team this presentation. Yeah. Excellent. Okay, we'll kind of start really with the kind of the constructs that we're working on, just as kind of a background here. So obviously, we're always talking about the Clean Air Act. So what does the Clean Air Act ultimately do? It establishes what's referred to as the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. A lot of what we're talking about with PM10, PM 2.5. Establishes deadlines to attain those standards, and it also establishes the programs around how we attain those programs. The next piece of that is, of course, the EPA. They put a little bit more finer pen on that. They actually developed the National Ambient Air Quality Standards in conjunction with a scientific board that advises them on that. They establish specifically the planning requirements on how we submit a SIP and what components must be in there, and then ultimately make a determination of attainment as we get to these deadlines. And then the biggest piece with the EPA is what we call federal enforceability. So as we put these rules in place for us to get SIP credit, they have to be, quote, federally enforceable. So that requires an approvable state implementation plan. The district and CARB come into the program is obviously we develop very specifically the plans and rules to do emission reductions. CARB has some level of mobile source control. We'll talk a bit more about the waivers later on. The district deals with the stationary sources, those fixed sources, and then area sources. So that's our jurisdiction there. That's we'll talk a little bit more about how that challenge has manifested over time. And then again, the really critical piece here too is these incentive programs that we're talking about that really help push us across the finish line. And then again, we have permitting and compliance responsibilities as well. I'm going to skip quickly through the next two slides, mainly so John does not hit me with any kind of infringement penalties here, but you've kind of heard the good story and the challenges of the physical piece and where we've accomplished different standards. But I think it's good we can kind of pick back up here on a topic that obviously we've been talking a lot about, which is substantial emission reductions over time. So how do we get there? It's a really tried and true formula, and that's really working on rules and incentive programs that actually result in meaningful reductions in emissions. So we have some of the most stringent, if not the most stringent rules in place here in the Valley, incredibly strong incentive programs that are just wildly effective. We can see the 7.2 billion, somewhere in the neighborhood of 250 plus tons of emission reductions from those programs. That obviously has to be done with strong stakeholder partnership. That can't be done in a bubble, just in a regulatory environment. Again, that's engaging local businesses, our residents, the ag community. And again, we can see here, and I think it's almost an understatement, it's been transformative for air. So we can see here, as we talked about many times, the massive emission reductions that has come from this. What I think is really important here is emission reductions in themselves, because we're talking a lot about precursors. So NOx is a precursor to ozone and PM 2.5, VOCs. Emission reductions just in a bubble aren't enough. And I think, John showed kind of the next slides. The district has a legacy of meaningful emission reductions where they actually show up at monitors. So I think that's the important element of this. There's a lot of folks that work strictly in the currency of emission reductions, but if those emission reductions aren't showing up at monitors, you'll still have some challenges. And I think we see here with the PM 2.5 standards, again, over time, transformative, I think is absolutely the right word. We've seen just massive emission reductions. We're certainly now meeting the 1997 standard. On the road to meet the 2012 standard and the 2024 standard. And we'll just kind of see where that ultimately goes, though that's under current litigation just recently with the EPA. Very similar story here with ozone. Again, massive emission reductions that are showing up at monitors. We just talked about how we had the approved 1 hour maintenance plan. We can see here we're very, very close again on the 1997 standard. So we're well on the way there. And then again, we do have some work to do on the 08 and 2015 ozone standard. So really kind of getting into the meat of it. I won't go through every single plan, but we can see here with the PM 2.5 and PM 10 plans, there's been just several plans over time, starting with the first of the kind indirect source rules, burning fugitive dust rules, the early 2000s. Again, we start to begin to build upon each of these plans. So each of these plans are layered on each other. So they contemplate what was done in the past plan. If we have success there, do we strengthen these rules? Again, where do we bring in different incentive programs, again, help accelerate to attainment? But again, you can see wood burning, stationary sources, kind of taking the more historic portion. And as you can see, as we move over time, then mobile sources play a bigger part ultimately in our attainment strategies. Again, similar story here for ozone, both NOx and VOC precursors. Again, a real heavy emphasis on our stationary sources in the beginning. Certainly mobile sources play a big part of that. We'll talk a bit more about how they're playing a bigger part of that. Plans that we've had to use what is referred to as a black box. So under the Clean Air Act, when we don't have technologies available to us, referred to as the black box for yet to be developed technologies. We've used that in the past, and maybe something we have to use in the future. We'll talk a little bit about that in just a few minutes. But again, we can see how again these programs layer on each other, more stringency as we go along with our stationary sources. But again, ultimately, mobile sources play a bigger part of that as we move to kind of the current state. So as part of those plans, obviously rules is the key portion of those plans. Are they effective? Are they reducing air pollution? And so we can see here since 2020, we've submitted numerous plans to the EPA. Again, each one of these bring different levels of PM 2.5 and NOx or VOC reductions, again, all ultimately to have an attainment demonstration and get us into attainment as soon as possible. So again, pretty laundry list here of different rules just in the past 5 years. And as we mentioned, we'll be working on the two here at the bottom, the 4550 and 4901. And so again, we talked about this earlier, so I won't really spend much time on here. So this was just again, refer to the 1 hour ozone maintenance plan that we removed the 185 fees for. The flip side was again, the 185 fees kicked back in. We had the determination of non-attainment for the 1997 ozone standard. And again, the really good news story is here is that we have met the annual 1997 PM 2.5 standard. And so we're just waiting for final determination with the EPA on that one. So really kind of get into the challenges going forward. So there's several challenges as we look for air quality. And John kind of mentioned some of the more physical ones with the meteorology and topography. I'd like to start this one with actually kind of a good news story that's manifested itself in kind of a challenge. We've talked a bit about that is, we've been implementing the Clean Air Act since 1970. The district here is certainly, front edge in emission reduction. So when it comes to stationary sources, those fixed sources, and many of our area sources, we have a very mature program, very strict program. So as we move into the future, this challenge is based on our success. And this is a success that's both at the national level. We've had massive reductions on a federal level. We've had massive reductions here in California, and then certainly the district. So from a stationary source, what's left, that begins that kind of challenges what would effectively move the needle going forward. And there are measures that we can do to do that. But I think it's important to say that those prior successes have led to this kind of challenge on the stationary source front, and that there is just becoming limited opportunities on what we can regulate to really meaningfully move the needle. The other challenge that we talk about is this California waivers, this 209B. We know through Congress, they did recently remove several very important waivers that were part of, you can see these two plans here, the 2022 ozone plan and the 2024 PM 2.5 plan. They relied heavily on mobile emission reductions from those waivers. California did preemptively pull a couple of the waivers before the CRA action, but the summation of that is we have those two plans that are basically have an emissions gap in there. So we'll talk a little bit more now in detail on kind of where this element of kind of the emissions, or excuse me, the mobile source emissions become a problem. So to put a finer point on that, the reason why that mobile source is such a critical issue to our attainment is that you can see 80% of our NOx emissions come from these mobile sources. So recently, with the congressional actions, we could see this, CARB submitted these waivers. Some were withdrawn, others were disapproved through the Congressional Review Act. What that meant was that we have a pretty substantial hole in our in our attainment plans for particularly ozone and an emissions gap on the PM 2.5 plans. As you can see here, the federal government, they have sole control over mobile sources, CARB with a limited source under the 209B. And then the district, we have no really mobile source control. So that's the big challenge that sits in front of us, that the largest source of emissions is one that's somewhat outside the jurisdiction of the district. So what does that ultimately mean when we talk about the consequences of the plan? Well, we talked a bit about the 2-to-1 offset. So if we can't attain these standards and we don't have an approvable plan, what we see here is permitting barriers for new or expanded major sources. And what that requires is a 2-to-1 offset for every ton of emissions they put out, they got to find a way to reduce 2 tons. It's essentially nearly impossible to do that. So it puts a pretty big burden on any new or expanded sources. The other piece is what I often refer to as kind of sanctioning a solution. So one of the other pieces is the EPA is required to pull your highway monies. In this case, it's a $2.5 billion hit plus the job losses. And then in many cases, those transportation projects, debottleneck projects, which actually can be an emission reduction. And so there could be kind of that double hit where those projects could actually be helping us. Those are safety projects. In some cases, you can move those through, but for the most part, you're pretty much locked up on any new projects with the loss of highway monies. And then ultimately, if you still don't have an approval plan 24 months later, the federal government is required to step in under a federal implementation plan. That becomes challenging again because we have folks outside the area has less understanding of the stakeholders, the emission sources, now regulating your environment. And I think the biggest piece, and it probably maybe shouldn't be really on the bottom here, is obviously you have delayed health benefits. So as this goes along and you're not attaining the standards, the really biggest impact is you're not meeting a health-based standard. So in terms of kind of what's really in front of us with these different plans, we have the 2018 PM 2.5 plan. For the most part, I think we have a lot of this covered here. What we did recently get from the EPA, they are being sued on the 2006 24-hour standard. So we are moving through that process. They are likely to make a finding of failure to attain for that standard, in which case that will shift us into a 5% plan, which means that we have to reduce our emissions inventory for those source categories by 5% each year. We can pick either direct PM 2.5 or a precursor, in this case, NOx, but that does offer a pretty substantial challenge going ahead. So we are working closely with CARB and talk with the EPA on how we would navigate that process going forward. Again, when we start talking about the 2022 ozone plan, we talked there with an emissions gap. Because of the California waiver withdrawals and the CRA actions, there is now an attainment demonstration gap. Here, we do have that option that I referred to earlier is called the black box. This is the yet to be found technologies. We hopefully can leverage this potentially to fill that gap. Again, those discussions are still ongoing, but there is an option there. The PM 2.5 plan and the gap there, it's less of a gap, but still substantial. We don't have a black box option. And so we are working through a 5-year extension request. That is something that's a big topic. The EPA, it's in front of them now. We want to make sure that we get this 5-year extension. This will bump the attainment date out to 2030 and buy us some really, really valuable time. As you can see from the earlier graphs, we're making substantial progress toward the 12 microgram standard. And we think that in that time, we can find a solution. But unfortunately, without that extension, that's going to be a substantial problem for us. And then on the transportation conformity piece, I think when we first presented this slide to the governing board in October, this was a pretty substantial issue because there's still a lot of mystery around whether EPA was going to approve this MFAC model. It looks like from what we heard from CARB, the EPA has approved the model. So that means transportation process can go forward. For folks that are not familiar with the transportation conformity process, what that is that any federal project that's funded by the feds has to ensure that it doesn't cause or contribute a violation to the NAAQS. So they have to go through that analysis. That model is one major component to it. So it looks like that's been fixed. The other piece is the motor vehicle emission budget. So there's a budget that says, here's your freeboard on what you can do with these projects, and you can't go above that. So there does need to be some adjustments to what's referred to as the MVEB. We have been talking to CARB. It does sound like there's some solutions in place. So transportation conformity at least can go forward now, but there are some counties that are going to need some adjustments from CARB. So we're going to continue to work with them to ensure that we get those pieces also worked out so everyone can pass the conformity piece of it. But at least we got the one major domino knocked down, which is the MFAC approval. So kind of going into the future, I think it's safe to say with mostly any plans, really a one-size-fits-all silver bullet plan really never works. And I think as we start to talk about, mobile sources and how we address that issue, we here at the district are looking at a multifaceted kind of technology neutral approach to really advocating for emission reductions from our highest polluting mobile sources. So that really looks like supporting certainly zero. And we've talked about, some of the infrastructure challenges there. We also believe there to be, some really good emission reduction options in the near term. That it looks, like renewable natural gas and some other options that kind of help us transition to that. The key piece there is that there SIP creditable, so we can use it in those plans to fill that emissions gap that we talked about. So we have an approvable plan that we can have in place. The other piece of that is we talked about the shortfall. And then again, we want to make sure that we are working quickly to meet the health-based standards. So we are protecting human health and population. So kind of put a little bit finer point on that as we kind of look to these different technologies. We have, a near-term, mid-term, kind of long-term piece there. So zero emission vehicles, again, we certainly celebrate that. We want to do what we can to leverage that. We know that today, though, just through many different mechanisms, that's not going to happen tomorrow. So we do need to look at, what are some of the more mid and near-term emission reductions, what's cost effective, what's actually feasible. And so that looks like zero and near zero. Like we talked about earlier, failing to meet those deadlines come with some pretty significant economic sanctions, come with health impacts. So finding what those near-term and long-term requirement, rapid deployment of the zero near-term emission technologies and infrastructure are absolutely key, but we see it being a blended portfolio, certainly in the today. And again, as we talk about these different incentive programs, which Todd will talk about some of the really heavily impactful ones, those ultimately need to be SIP creditable. So to fill that emissions gap, to get in a plan that we can get approved by EPA, we really want to kind of emphasize which programs are SIP creditable. The farmer and the Colorado programs are just that. So again, we would just look at kind of key technologies in the today. It looks like renewable natural gas, low NOx, diesel, and battery electric. Kind of transition phase is kind of a mixed portfolio of that, and then move it into, again, maybe a bigger shift into the battery electric vehicle, and then hopefully hydrogen, and then maybe other technologies into the future. But again, the real emphasis here is that it's going to require some near-term different thinking on mobile source strategies to try transition us to kind of what the future ultimately holds. So then I'll turn it over to Todd.
Thank you, Tim. Excuse me. So building on what Tim just talked about in that last slide, I'm going to focus on some of the near-term opportunities that we see related to our existing grants and incentive programs, or our voluntary incentive programs. I'm going to go quickly. I know we're running short on time here, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these two slides. I think you're all somewhat familiar with our grants and incentive programs here at the district, but just focusing first and foremost on our ag tractor replacement program. This has been by far our most popular program, incredibly impactful, incredibly successful, and our most cost-effective program. These are primarily diesel to diesel replacements, and we have about 7,000 projects in our queue right now. We actually had to stop taking applications because we didn't want that queue to grow so large that it became unmanageable, and we just need the funding to actually execute all those projects and replace all those pieces of ag equipment that are out there. That project alone can result in about 4 tons per day of emission reductions, of NOx reductions, just that one program. Another program that we operate here at the district is our heavy duty truck replacement program. Again, primarily diesel to diesel, although we are doing, we're looking at things like natural gas, we're looking at things like electric. We want to be supportive of this new technology where it's feasible, where it makes sense. We understand that the challenges are out there with grid capacity, range anxiety. We understand all those issues, but we actually have to be on the forefront of those technologies to be able to move that ball forward and get to where we need to be with the ultimate goal, when it's feasible and in areas where it's feasible, of zero emission. Our locomotive replacement program, very similar. It's primarily been diesel to diesel replacements. However, there are hybrid and zero emission technologies out there, particularly in the switcher locomotive area. Again, it's extremely cost effective. You can get huge emission reductions for your dollar spent with locomotive replacements. Zero emission forklifts has taken off in the last couple of years. It's been extremely popular over the last few years. This is basically replacing propane and gasoline forklifts with zero emission units. And again, it's been extremely successful just over the past couple of years. Our clean vehicle fueling infrastructure program, it's a companion to our truck replacement program. You have to have the fueling infrastructure in place, whether that be hydrogen, electricity, clean burning natural gas. You have to be able to support those vehicles with the associated infrastructure. Our Drive Clean in the San Joaquin program replaces light duty vehicles with plug-in hybrid or zero emission vehicles. The Charge Up EV charger incentive program gets to some of those issues that we were talking about earlier, where we're trying to expand electric vehicle charging infrastructure throughout the valley. So we do have significant incentives available in that program for the light duty EVs in the valley. Our Ag Burn Alternatives Grant Program provides resources that promote chipping, mulching, and composting as alternatives to open agricultural burning, which is no longer, for the most part, no longer allowed here in the valley. Significant reductions in PM with no burning. And it also supports agricultural sustainability in the valley. And then finally, the wood stove and fireplace change out program. It's basically, it assists valley residents with replacing old wood burning devices with cleaner option, natural gas options, and other things. We've provided over 32,000 vouchers and $70 million, significantly targeting that PM that is a wintertime issue here in the valley. This is not an exhaustive list of our grant programs, but these are just some of the highlights to give you an idea of some of the near-term emission reduction opportunities that are available to us here in the valley. So with that, I will turn it back to your board for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments in Bakersfield?
Yes. This is for Tim on page 13. The federal action impacts to valley attainment efforts. So it says that, like, you say mobile sources are affected. I'm of the thought that CTC is part of this program, and it hasn't been withdrawn. The CTC program, the Clean Truck Check, we still pay our 31, or I think it's 32.30 now per year, and we still have to, now we're up to 2 times a year testing our units. Are you saying that that's not accurate, that we shouldn't have to be doing that? Because the DMV says we still have to do it.
Madam Chair, members of the committee. No, we're not making that statement. What we're saying is that CARB had some very specific waivers that were kind of future state. Those are the ones we're talking about being either withdrawn, so locomotives, some of the other trucking, the omnibus was one of them. And then the real big one was the Advanced Clean Cars 2 incentive. So that was the all EVs sold by 2035, I believe. So there's a very specific list that was, like I say, either withdrawn or disapproved by under the Congressional Review Act. You still have to pay the fee, unfortunately.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I know the state has a most strictest environmental rules and stuff that we follow for all spectrums. Are we doing more than what the federal standard is, exceeding it, or we're under compliance with the federal standard? And if we are under the federal standards and stuff, I feel like we're being threatened. If we don't do it, the federal government will take it over. The CAA, but I just wondering, are we right in according to the federal standard? Are we there? I know in our state standard we're above. We do more than any other state in the union. I just like to know what the benchmark is, where we're at. And I could have missed it somewhere, but I'm just asking if are we in line according to the federal standard, or are we below or right at the federal standards?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, it's a great question. What we're talking about is the federal health-based standards. So the challenges that we have is meeting some of the contemporary ones. So while we do have very much some of the most stringent, if not the most stringent programs in place, we're still not meeting some of the federal standards.
Out of curiosity, is there any state that has accomplished the federal standard, or are we lacking? Or we need to do more?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, there are states that have met different portions of the standard. Everybody seems to, across the nation, be having a lot of trouble with the 2008 ozone standard and definitely the 2015 ozone standard. I think that's something that's definitely out there that's kind of universal across the nation. And then again, just given different meteorological situations, terrain, like we talked about. Different areas may have more unique issues, but I think more universally, those more contemporary ozone standards are a universal challenge for most parts of the country. So certainly urban parts of the country.
Yeah, and probably another thing. I was going to pick on Arizona a little bit. Why is Arizona utilities about a third of the cost of our utilities? And why that when I go to Yuma, I can get gas for $2.30, 34 cents a gallon, and they buy their fuel right here from California, where they buy it from. And that just gives you a line where how much of a tax money that we're spending in California and where that money is going to, and a breakdown where the money is going to. I know part of it's going to high-speed rail, other part's going to less smaller communities that they're providing helping them out. Where's all that money going to? And it has to be a tremendous amount of money because you have 30 million cars here in California, at least, not more, and registration fees, which is much higher than most states. Now they're going to do that possibility that one tax on UV vehicles. We're generating so much money and stuff, but where's it going to, and has it helped? Because I probably drive more than most people do. Yeah, I'm retired, but I still drive close to 100,000 miles a year and traveling and stuff. And I know different states works more higher than most states, but they have nice roads and everything and infrastructure and appears like their environment in compliance because the air looks clean and all that. But yet here we always got fires. It's like you were mentioning earlier. There's no pun intended on that. We need to take care of our forests, but I like to control burning. I'd rather have the controlled burning and some smoke than wait for a wildfire and burn down houses and lives, and it costs more money. It's more cheaper to control it. And I just like to go back in history. I love history. Because I know that in the early days with American Indians, they come down the hill at the end of summer, at the end of winter, to another location for winter. Last one they put fires out there in the forest that cleans it up, and everything. All the animals thrive from it through the new growth and new grass and stuff, and it helps the forest. But yet we don't do that here. We're getting too rigid in our environment that there's a fire, we got to take it out. But I think we need to have more control over that. It's more cheaper, but at a constructive cost to it, an afford deal. Because I know there's some diehard environmentalists don't want anything, and they go back. And I don't want to go backwards. I want to go forward. Yes, I want my clean air. Yes, I want a safe California, but I don't want to live like a third world country because I can't afford nothing and everything, and you can't find nothing about it trying to achieve. But I'm just wanting it to be a common sense type deal. But how do you track that, or can we track that? As far as that's just one example, but all the benefits that we're trying to do and the strictness of everything, and we're all paying for it, and it's getting harder to, especially for retired people, to even live in California. And businesses are pulling out like you can't believe, going to other locations. And it's kind of hard to move your land. It's kind of hard to move a business over there, but people are doing it. But we need to be proactive as far as, at the same time, have a balance. Where's the balance at to doing what we're doing right now, but yet not sacrificing our way of life, basically, to have a normal where we can eat, drink, and be merry, but we can't. I know like I said, I am retired, but I'm learning how to budget. And I just, if I'm having issues and stuff, I'm sure there's many, many more people having the same issues. But we need to have a balance to keep our people here, keep our young folks here, and not moving out of the state. For example, I have 3 children. They all moved out of state. California just couldn't get a right job. They couldn't find a career for themselves. So they left, and they won't come back. That's sad. But we just need to be balanced and have common sense that we can go ahead and achieve what we're trying to do. Maybe a little slower pace, or maybe at a more smarter way of doing it, where we don't give up our vehicles because it's out of compliance, or truck drivers having to sell their vehicles to Mexico because it's out of compliance, and it costs. And that cost of goods of transportation impacts our cost of goods in all the stores and
Through the chair, just
whole
real
area.
quick, without interrupting you, just want to, this is Shiraz, by the way, just wanted to appreciate your comments and understand kind of all your perspectives. Some of these things I can't weigh on because obviously the state handles a lot of these budgeting issues. What I can say is that the district does try to take kind of a balanced approach in everything that we do. Our rules and regulations are meant to be as cost effective as possible. And as you can see, we've achieved significant emission reductions working collectively with stakeholders, industry, Valley residents, and we've been able to achieve significant emission reductions. However, one of the slides you probably saw, just based on where we live, our topography, our geography, it does make it a little bit more challenging for us compared to other regions to attain some of these national ambient federal standards that we're talking about. So it does make it a little more challenging. And as you can see, there's certain challenges ahead of us that are very difficult to attain, but we are looking incentives. You heard about incentives. Todd's last 2 slides talked about all those programs are incentive based, not regulatory based. So we do understand that in order to move forward, we have to get significant incentive funding and not just mandate these things. Obviously, the state has their own plans, and there has to be some long-term strategies, but we do believe the best way to move forward is through an incentive-based approach. And, as I said earlier, this is something that we're advocating for heavily. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Any questions or comments in Modesto?
We have,
I have a really quick one. I'll try to keep it short. I appreciate the presentation, and especially a presentation that doesn't focus just on zero emissions. So I appreciate that with the district and seeing the near term going up to future term. But I'm a visual person, so I did have some questions on page 13. So I know that we have here a chart in all of the air district rooms that show the reductions from the stationary source emissions. And on page 13, we talked about that mobile source emissions account for 80% of the NOx emissions. And when you make changes, those percentages are going to change. So I want to make sure I understand what this 80% references. So are we saying that greater than 80% mobile sources, and so the stationary sources were only 20%, and we achieved a lot of great air with only tackling 20%? Or am I reading that incorrectly? And then the other question would be, this greater than 80%, what year was that attained? Because we know in the last so many years we have pushed the electric vehicles. So do we have any charts with the mobile sources that kind of show what we've done in the last couple of years with the people that have had the incentives to get the EV vehicles or hybrid vehicles?
Thank you for your comment, through the chair. If you look at the chart to your right or your left, I don't know where it is in Modesto, you see that from 1980 down to 2024, you see significant emission reductions. Now, we talk about 94% reduction in stationary sources, but if you look in 2024, 20% of the total emissions are stationary sources and 80% are mobile sources. So mobile sources have also reduced a significant amount, right? But they still are 80% of the total emissions now, right? Which is why we still need significant, in order to come into attainment with the federal standards, we still need significant emission reductions from mobile sources. And what this chart is trying to illustrate is because of the waivers being removed or not approved, we're losing some of these reductions as part of our SIP planning efforts, right? And so there's a little bit of a gap in terms of how do we attain some of these very strict standards. So that's where we're focusing. As you know, the chart that the last two slides chart was talking about was, well, instead of doing just going all the way to zero emissions, which we ultimately need to do, how do we get some short-term reductions based on the technology that is available and through an incentive-based approach?
Thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions in Modesto?
Yes, one more.
Yeah, this is Chris Fisher. Thanks for this report. I guess I have one comment on, and Tim, you touched on it a little bit earlier about how we get the approved list where we can get the incentives based upon that. And it's probably less on the regular consumer side, but on the municipal side, on the farm equipment side, a lot of these things aren't available for us. So by the time they get on the approved list, there's no more of those model years that we can purchase. So really, when we look at it, there's probably about 6 months of availability that we just can't utilize. Now, I realize that a lot of times they're retroactive, but that means us taking a risk, meaning they won't be on the approved list for the next year. Is there any opportunity to kind of expedite that process, to be more proactive, get these available so that, I think you would probably see a lot more people utilizing these incentives?
Hi, this is Todd, the grants director. Are you talking specifically about public fleet vehicles through like the public benefit grants program?
Correct. So like the Ford Lightning, hasn't been available for months, the approved one.
Yeah. So in general, we can expedite approval, even though we're not updating the official list. If you have to get the next model year or the next version of that vehicle, as long as you contact us, we can make a fairly quick determination and get that approved, without having to kind of go through and re-update that list. Understanding that model years change, from time to time. It's something that we're fairly responsive to. So, just let us know if you're running into that issue. And we're happy to work with you on situations like that. We understand that happens, particularly towards the end of that model year where you're switching over. We understand that, the time it takes to get a contract and model years don't always line up. So happy to work with you on that and get you approval as necessary.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any questions or comments in Fresno?
Yes, please. This question is for Todd. We know that the farmer program is completely oversubscribed and shut down for the foreseeable future. I wondered about the Ag Burn Alternatives Grant Program. How close to that being oversubscribed is it?
Great question. We have substantial interest in that program on a yearly basis. To date, we have enough funding in the current budget to handle what we're expecting to see between now and the end of the fiscal year. It'll be, however, we've sort of depleted the large state grant that we got to operate this program over the last several years. Now, we do have some limited opportunities to fund that program moving into the future. But that's all going to be decided during the budget process that's coming up here starting in January and ultimately being approved in June of this coming year for the next fiscal year. So we're going to have to make some very tough decisions with the limited amount of money that we're going to have moving forward. We're going to have to make some decisions on where that money goes. I can anticipate, without speaking for our board, I can anticipate most likely that there will be some money put into that program, but in terms of how much, that remains to be seen. And then we have to weigh that against all of the other programs that may be competing for those dollars. And going into this next fiscal year, we are looking at significantly less incentive funding that we've had in the last several years. So those decisions are going to be, they're going to be tough. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments from President? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to item 12, AB 617, implementation and updates. Good morning, Stephanie.
Morning, Chair, members of the CAC. My name is Stephanie Ng, and I'm the Director of Community Strategies and Resources here at the Air District. I'm here to provide you all an update on the implementation of AB 617 since our last meeting. I know we're running a little bit late, so I'm going to be very brief today. We continue to meet with all 4 of our CARB selected community steering committees, South Central Fresno, Shafter, Stockton, and Arvin Lamont. Something that we are thinking about as we approach this time of year, this is a great time of year, in my opinion, because this is a time that we put together our annual reports to the community. And it's a really fun time for us to reflect on all the great work that's been done this past year. We are working on those annual reports. We've reviewed them with community members. We are putting them into kind of an interactive, cool online tool called Story Map. So they're much more engaging and kind of fun to look at. And so that's something that we are working on finalizing. Something else that we look forward to at the end of the year is we do an in-person meeting down in Lamont with our Arvin Lamont CSC. Really excited to meet with communities members face to face. We typically do all of our other meetings on Zoom. So this is just a fun opportunity for us to discuss and move forward SERP implementation. And we also continued, it's really been our goal to continue to get out to other communities throughout the whole valley, aside from those formally selected through CARB in the 617 process. And so we continue to engage with communities. We were in Modesto and Lost Hills just this last month to talk to them about different district programs and just resources that community members can take advantage of. So we look forward to those opportunities and we'll continue to seek them in the coming year. And we also have Brian Moore over at the Office of Community Air Protection here to provide us an update on CARB side.
Cool. Thanks, Stephanie. And I'll also be brief because I know we're running over. And actually, Mark and Shayla did a great job of actually highlighting my two items today. So just to reemphasize what Mark said, the AB 617 consultation group, our multi-stakeholder advisory body, is meeting tomorrow, December 3rd. And you can also join virtually. I sent the Air District the link for you all to join. So, and if you have any issues with that, you can totally email me if you would like to attend. That starts early, around 9:30, I think, to 3:30. So it's an all-day event to go over the charter. And then the other thing that Shayla mentioned was that we have a community air protection program update. That actually is a physical document. It's just about a 8-page document that highlights program progress to date. And we're planning on starting to do that 3 times a year. We're going to release that document. And I think I also sent the link to Air District staff to distribute to you all. So if you have any questions about the meeting tomorrow or the program update, when you get a chance to look at it, please feel free to reach out to me. And I think that's it.
Thank you. Any questions or comments in Modesto? Seeing none. Any questions or comments in Bakersfield? Also seeing none. Any questions or comments here in Fresno? All right. Thank you guys so much for that.
Cool.
Thanks for hanging in with us. We'll go ahead and skip item 13, Outreach and Communications Report. Based on the extensive information that we have already received and due to timing issues. So we'll go ahead and move on to item 14, CAC member comments. Any CAC member comments in Bakersfield? Seeing none. Any CAC member comments in Modesto?
We have one member comment in Modesto.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I apologize. I don't know if this is the right time for the comment. I'm still kind of getting the lay of the land, but I do want to maybe put something out there for the board to consider. It's that time of year. I'm seeing a lot of, or I'm hearing a lot of different options, or not complaints, I guess, about the residential wood burning program, and follows that recertification process. Some of the comments I get, are the price varies quite a bit. They can range from $100 to $300, depending on it. Availability is very difficult to get someone to come out and do it. And then surrounding the frequency in which, are we looking at analytical data to say that are we, just because we go around the sun, do we need to check these things? And I always take the approach of, if I hear one comment, there's probably a bunch of other people that are silent about it. So hoping that we could reconsider some of that, and maybe even offer an incentive program to kind of ease the burden on those that rely on that for heat.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments in Modesto? Being none, I'll go ahead and bring it to Fresno. Any questions or comments here in Fresno? I will try to be brief. One of the questions it's probably a rhetorical question, but why do we continue to pass rules before getting to that attainment? It seems like there's rules upon rules upon rules, and we're throwing money at this and we're throwing money at that. And I get it's rhetorical, but I just wanted to put that out there. If I ran my city that way, I would be gone in a heartbeat. And I know that that doesn't have anything to do with the district, but I just wanted to put that out there. I also wanted to mention, again, not so much with the district, but the state and federal, for lack of better term, urinating contest that's happening right now.
Great term.
Sorry about that. The people that are affected are us, the people, financially, all type of different ways. I don't know, again, not this board's purview, but we need to find a way to work together for, we've heard numerous times, common sense solutions. And I want to thank the Air District for trying to be the common sense in all of this and finding those solutions that are attainable, trying to be affordable, trying to mitigate where we're caught in the middle. So I just want to thank all the staff that works towards that and looks to the future and analyzes where is this going to get us, and trying to come up with those common sense solutions, which we don't seem to get from those that pass those regulations down to us. So I just want to thank you guys for all of your work. Also want to thank you guys for your time. I apologize for running late. It is a difficult thing to, keep everybody's comments where they need to be, but I also like to give people the option to say what they need to say. So thank you guys for your patience. And thank you guys for understanding and listening to what we all bring to the table from our different groups that we represent. So thank you all for, I don't even know the word, like deciphering through all of that. And I just want to thank you all so much for all of your work, and for everybody that hung in online 30 minutes past when we usually end. But with that, I just want to, again, thank you everyone for your time. Hope everybody has a safe holiday and a safe drive home. And we'll go ahead and adjourn at.
Through the chair.
Sorry,
We
what
do
I
have
forget?
number 15 volunteer for this governing board meeting.
We already know that. Manuel. Sorry, that's why I skipped that, because it's just a
Thank you
given.
guys, and happy holidays and happy new year to everyone.
Thank you. Manuel is voluntold to present the report to the governing board meeting, item number 15. Are you okay with that?
I will be out of the area.
Oh, shoot.
I will be in Washington DC on immigration.
Okay. Is there
So-
another volunteer?
We can do it by a Zoom if you'd like. I can call in if that's acceptable. Shiraz, if somebody can't do it, can I call in and give the?
Through the chair, we always publish the report, so we can refer to the written report during the update time.
Okay.
Beautiful. Perfect. Perfect.
Perfect.
Zoom the report.
So with
Zoom the minute.
that, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 12:29. Thank